How Rafat Kanon. Mai Gvota Fabian Mai Vata Are Outcast Tvon. Todar me Evota yo Menai Nor Agazork. Lapta Dauka Vara Adelpha. Welcome to the second episode of Working on Outcast 2. As you might have guessed, today we're talking about the language of the Talans called Agazork. Personally for me, Agazork, the language of the Talans, was one of my favorite aspects of Outcast 1. It was such a great experience exploring the world, learning the language, and deep diving into Talan culture. Everything in Outcast has its distinct name, so you really need to learn the Agazork language to finish your mission.
Hello.
The Ulukai is here. The Yards have spoken and delivered you. I, Shamaz Zokras, await the words of the Ulukai.
Years before Outcast 2 went into full production, Eve and I had already talks about the language of the game and the possibility for the sequel to really improving on it and making it an even bigger and even better aspect of the game's world. For those of you who don't know, in the early 2000s, a dedicated small German-speaking fan community created the Sprache der Talaner project, which focused on developing the language even further with the goal of having a full language of Agazork. Of course, this goal was a little bit too big for us and we couldn't really develop a full language in the end, but I have to say we came pretty far and developed a lot of new content, new words and grammar rules for Adelpha. The original website of the project is long gone, but you can still find all the 10 lessons on my Planet Adelpha fan site and check them out if you want to know more about Agazork. When production on Outcast 2 started, Eve, Pablo and the team came back to me and asked me to be a language expert on the sequel. So I went back to all the vocabulary we invented for the Sprache der Talaner project, translated it to English and looked if we could use it for the sequel. I wanted to reuse as much material of the fan project as possible, but unfortunately the rules, the grammar was very complicated. It was based on German and it was not really easy to get a hang of it, so I wanted to reduce the complexity and make it more accessible to new fans. So, together with Pablo, the game designer and director of Outcast 2, we sat down, we wrote down new grammar rules, reduced them to a bare minimum to make them easier and also more coherent with Outcast 1 as the basis for the sequel. So if you check out the language lessons on my website today, they are already adapted to the new grammar style, they are already canon with what will be in Outcast 2, so it's a great way to prepare yourself for the second game, to check them out and learn some Agazork. After we wrote down all the language rules and set the basic frame for Agazork in Outcast 2, I was put in charge of being the main writer for all the Agazork dialogues in the game. Writing a modern video game is a huge task. There are so many lines of dialogues to write, especially with a game like Outcast, and there's so many cutscenes and things to do. So if you thought Outcast 1 had a lot of dialogue and really cool characters, so just wait for Outcast 2 and check out all the funny dialogue and great moments you will experience in the game. A great team of writers worked on Outcast 2 with Domenico and Arno being the two leads. They are such nice and talented people and I really had a blast working with them. Looking back at Outcast 1, there are a lot of single Agazork words, but actually there's not a lot of full spoken Agazork in the game. There are only a very few instances where we hear like the native tongue in full sentences.
Ulukai? Ulukai! Zonanikar! Zonguarta!
You guys want to keep it down? My head is splitting.
During the production for the sequel, we decided there should be a lot more Agazork in the sequel. So I'm very proud to announce that there will be a lot more Agazork in Outcast 2. There will be full sentences, full dialogues in the native language of the Talans. And this makes me very proud and very happy because the language, as said before, is one of the favorite aspects of the universe for me. At the same time, the team was fully aware that not everybody is a fan of Agazork, and the game should be as accessible for gamers as possible. So we decided it's not fun to need a dictionary to walk around the game's world, so we limited most of the Agazork to be optional content, to be additional conversations you don't have to do if you want to finish the main storyline. So there's a lot of Agazork content there for those of you who like that aspect. But if you're a core gamer, more casual gamer, if you just want to have fun in the world, you can avoid most of it. I cannot really give you specifics of how these Agazork dialogues are used in the game, but to give you an example what you can expect, I will have a quick chat with Cutter about it. How me? Tet Yoha Zon Uyon Zark?
Cutter Slade, your friendly neighborhood invader slayer.
Yonejinat Agazork?
Cutter Slade.
Yo Sayat Atet Tvonha.
Different planet, same problems.
While creating those dialogues, I was very fortunate to have a long list of vocabulary from the Sprache der Talana project, so I only needed to invent those words new that I didn't have already. For the language, I wanted to keep as much consistency and logic as possible. So a good example would be every region in Outcast 1 ending on R, like Ranzar, Shamazar, Motasar, and we keep that for the sequel like Kizar or Sar. Another good example would be the ending I, which is very specific, like it's used in Ulukai, Kamenai, and we reuse that in the sequel for a new word like Zarokai, which translates to enemy of the essence. I also wanted the words itself to be connected to each other. Like a good example from Outcast 1 is the word Shamas for priest being connected to Shamazar, the region for priests and temples. So I expanded upon this idea in the sequel, and the existing word of Gvar, which means wound, was translated to a new word which is Gvarok, which means weapon or to inflict wounds, and also the verb Gvarta, which means fighting or hurting. Another task was to find proper Agazork names for new characters, new plants, resources, new creatures, and I really tried to give those distinct Agazork sounding names without them sounding coming from Earth. So I tried to keep them similar in style, but very distinct in the Agazork origin. A good example for this would be the new plant in Outcast 2, which is called Kvort. How does that sound for you? A little bit disgusting? Yes, because you might remember the established word Zort from Outcast 1, which means excrement. So I can assure you this new plant, Kvort, is anything but tasteful. One thing we changed for the sequel is to make the character names for the talents more diverse and less confusing with each other. So, do you remember Outcast 1 with all its confusing names like Zolas, Zalinas, Zak, Zave, Zot? Yeah, you get the point. For the character names, I really wanted to have both, to have them sound unique but also connected to the past of Outcast. So, for example, in Outcast 2 we have Zaleb, a very special Shamas, or Mor, who wants to become a village leader, or there's Brom, and Brom really likes explosives. I am not supposed to spoil too much of the game, but I can show you one creature. This beauty here from the trailer is called Agalenta, and for me the name really expresses the grace and elegance it has. So in the sequel we will have a great mixture of returning animals from the first game and totally new ones like the Galenta I just showed. So I really hope you will have a lot of fun encountering them in the game. So this is it for this moon. I really hope you enjoyed it, and if you want to support this channel, please like, share and comment on this video. I hope to see you back in the next one, and may the yachts be silent. Maya Afa.